Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey. The legislature is coming back to town in a few weeks, talking about what's coming up in this session. Lieutenant Governor, before this session ever started, there's been some controversy about the House Whip, Jeremy Durham from Williamson County. Questions about something that was presented to the grand jury involving some prescription drugs. The no true bill was brought back on him. Also, some questions about a letter he wrote to a federal judge asking leniency for a pastor friend of his who was involved in a child pornography case. There's some concern now about whether he ought to continue to stay in his leadership position. If he was in the leadership in the Senate, would you have asked him to step down?
I would at least discuss that with him, no doubt about that. I do think it becomes a distraction, and when the distraction overrides what the caucus needs to do, then the time does come to step down. All I've said in the past, that when he sent that letter, that was a poor judgment, and I do think it was. I still do believe that. Again, I know that Beth Harwell and her leadership team will be evaluating this. I don't want to get into this too much because it is a House issue. If it was a senator, I know Beth wouldn't want to get into it too much. So I feel confident in Beth's leadership and then Gerald McCormick's leadership and Glenn Cassell's leadership that they'll do what they need to do, and they'll have the facts better than I do.
One area you haven't been afraid to speak out about and ask for changes. In fact, you said heads should roll at the University of Tennessee about some postings on their website about holiday parties. You think it's been too politically incorrect. Whose heads do you actually want to have roll up there?
There's a fellow named Ricky Hall that I wouldn't know if he walked in here. That's having more 2 or 3 chances to correct stuff like this. And keep in mind, Pat, this is the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and if you look at the postings that they've had on their website, the official website of University of Tennessee, it was anything but diverse, anything but inclusive. It tried to pigeonhole everybody in the same little pigeonhole.
Should the funding for that particular office be discontinued?
Absolutely. I don't completely discontinued. I'm not sure. Should it be cut? Some, absolutely, because they're getting, this fellow makes $180,000 a year, which is more than the governor makes. And I've had some good discussions with the president of UT. He assures me that this is going to be addressed further. So I'll just kind of lay low for a little while to see what happens there. We'll come back January the 11th. But let me assure you, it's not up to me as much as it is 33 senators, 99 representatives. But I think most of the legislature thinks enough's enough.
Another area in higher education, Governor Haslam wants to change the governance for the Regents schools, set them up with each of their separate boards. You were side by side with him when he made that announcement. Does that mean you're supportive of that idea?
I am. I'm to take this to a personal level, for me, I'm an alum of East Tennessee State University.
And they'll have a new board.
And they do not have a board now, but they will have a new one. Yes, they will have one. And I can think of 7 to 9 good people from Northeast Tennessee who think a lot of that university, that if they had their own board, they could make sure their mission was met more properly than it has been now.
Now, normally for these boards, whether it's been UT or the Regents boards, they've been gubernatorial appointments. But in recent years, when boards and commissions have been established at the state level, the legislature has wanted to be involved in those appointments. Do you see yourself and Speaker Harwell perhaps deciding that you want to amend the legislation the governor sends, and we don't know exactly what all is going to be in it, that perhaps would allow the House and the Senate to make some of those appointments?
I don't think so. We want confirmations, what we'd like to have, and the fact that when the governor feels very strongly about this is his program, he's designed it, he's come up with it, so I don't want to hijack it midstream. And so, but there were some boards and commissions, you're exactly right, over the years that we said the legislature needs some say in this. So what I'd like to see is the governor have the appointment power, but the legislature have the confirmation power, and so I think that'd be the compromise we're looking for.
Well, that raises the question, if the legislature has confirmation power. You have confirmation power right now over Supreme Court appointments by the governor. There's one pending. Even before there was one pending, last year the legislature couldn't quite decide how they want to do those confirmation, who gives the most power, whether it's by joint session of both houses or separately. Are you going to fix that problem? Because you've got a Supreme Court justice that's sort of sitting there and nobody knows how they're going to fill that seat.
Exactly. We've had a lot of discussions with the governor and Beth Harwell about this. And originally the House was wanting to have a joint session as we do the constitutional officer, but that's set out in our Constitution. And so you have 99 representatives and 33 senators.
That gives them 99 votes and you only
3
have
to 1.
33.
3 to 1. You don't have to be a rocket. You don't have to be a mathematician to figure that out. So what I'd like to have is just separate confirmations. The House votes separately, the Senate votes separately, and it takes both both to confirm. I think we've about reached a compromise on that. It needs to be done quickly. Like you say, the governor really has, since late summer, has had a Supreme Court justice opening. He's had the 3 names now for a couple of months. I look for him the next week or so to make that appointment, so when we come back in session in January, in the first few weeks, we'll have a confirmation process. Keep in mind, if we do nothing in 60 days, he or I guess it's all he's in this section. I don't say he or she, but this happens to be all he's. They're all males, but he'll become the nominee anyway. So why wouldn't we want to come up with some kind of confirmation process?
An issue that the legislature has been talking a little bit about in the last couple of sessions have been medical marijuana. Now, I think you and the administration are kind of pushing back against doing that, but there's a bill, I think, that would just allow that for veterans to be involved in that aspect, combat veterans. Do you believe there ought to be, at least for those people who fought for this country, the opportunity to be able to use medical marijuana because it is a medical thing supervised by doctors? It's not recreational use of that drug.
You say it's medical. It is. I've seen cases where, my understanding, it gets out of hand when that happens. We keep in mind, last year we approved the use of cannabis oil, and I think that's much more easily regulated, much more easily prescribed by doctors than just allowing them to smoke the product. And I don't want to go down that slippery slope. So I don't see much happening on this. I'd say what we'll do is wait a year or two to see how the cannabis oil has worked out and is everything there we need to do. If we need to take that next step, it'll be a few years from now.
Also, John J. Hooker and others have been pushing for Tennessee to have a death with dignity bill, similar to what I think has been passed in California and a few other states. Has he had any success with you getting some success of supporting a bill like that?
No. The first thing you got to do is say, well, this is the way they do it in California. That bill's probably dead in the state Senate, okay? That's the first thing you do. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. John Jay's a good friend of mine, even though we have had our differences over the years, to say the least. I love what a colorful guy he is, and he is apparently in the last few years of his life, and he feels strongly about this, but I don't see that bill passing in the next legislature.
It wouldn't seem to be a session of the General Assembly if we didn't discuss gun rights. And what do you see happening this term? You were quite concerned after one of the recent mass shootings that Christians needed to go be arming themselves. Now, in Tennessee, there's lots of gun permits out there, so I assume that means lots of Christians. But do you more places you want to be able to gun permits?
No, I think we have a good system. I think we kind of have that sweet spot here in Tennessee, to where you have to go through the process of getting a gun permit. And exactly right, Pat. There's about 400,000 people. Law-abiding citizens have been basically no problem to the state of Tennessee, and I think the process that we have now is working. But I do think in this country there is an attack on Christians in certain ways, especially with some of the extremism we saw there for a while, and that's the reason I said what I said. But I think the system we have now, bottom line, is we've addressed the fact that you can keep it in your automobile while you're at work. You addressed the fact that you can take it in places that sell or serve alcohol as long as you aren't drinking. So I think we're right where we need to be. But will there be some legislation? Probably. There's 99 representatives and 33 senators, so somebody will bring something, and as long as it's not unreasonable, I'll be there telling them as big a proponent of Second Amendment rights as anybody. But I do think right now, if you talk to people on the street, they'll say, let's stay about where we are. A
lot of controversy as well about the teaching of Islam as a religion as a part of world history studies that have been going on in the junior high area. Some people say that I'll wait till high school. Do you believe the legislature will support a bill like that?
Absolutely. We're actually reviewing that right now, and I'm going to get some appointments to. We just revamped all of our standards for language arts and math, and now we're getting ready to get into social studies, and I think you'll see that addressed. But I think there is some concern in the fact that 7th or 8th grade, when this is brought up, and are students really at that age, are they too gullible to things of that nature? And how much does it leave up to the teacher? Is this history we're teaching, or is this religion we're teaching? So it will be addressed, but it does concern a lot of people in the legislature.
Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey is our guest on Inside Politics, talking about what's going to happen this coming winter and spring with the legislature coming back to town. Back to continue our conversation after you watch these messages.